Hello, my name is Graham Forbes and I'm Head of Market Solutions at Gemserv. Gemserv specializes in the governance of the energy market arrangements and in governance of the data that flows around the energy market. We've been providing these services since our inception at the opening of the energy market over 20 years ago. This presentation is about how the energy market could be governed in the future, a future that will be quite different, but with learnings from the past. A future which we're only just starting to glimpse today. As way of introduction, I would like to make three observations. First, this presentation reflects the challenge to our industry from government and regulator. The challenge to be more ambitious, to build an energy governance framework that is both agile and responsive. One that is not only fit for today, but also fit for tomorrow. Second, nothing in this presentation does not already exist. Gemserv has studied other industries, including aviation, food, telecoms, and financial services, to compare how governance operates in different environments. Through our innovation forums, we have tested and evolved our conclusions with the assistance of colleagues from across different types and sizes of energy business. My third observation is regarding timescales. We are not saying this can be completed today or tomorrow or even next year, but it can be done. Indeed, we are already seeing early evidence of new business models as demonstrated by the challenger companies that have contributed to the BEIS and Ofgem Energy Governance Review. We have used the term rules to describe all the legislation, regulation, licensing, and codes that energy companies have to abide by. These rules have evolved to stay relevant in a constantly changing environment, change that is increasing in pace and in significance. There are two main drivers for change. The first driver is technology. From the seismic changes brought about by the Industrial Revolution, we have seen the spread and standardization of technology on a regional, national, international, even global basis. From an earlier analog age through to today's digital doorway, there seems to be no limit to the number and variety of innovations being developed. The second driver is behavior. And by behavior, not only do I mean individuals, but I also mean those collective behaviors associated with companies, markets, governments, and regulators. Originally, energy was generated and consumed locally before the development of a national grid to carry energy across the nation. The introduction of an energy market also saw the start of its politicization. We have seen and continue to see poverty and climate change being addressed through various policies and levies. Rules have changed in response to these changes, and rules need to change again. So we have reached a point now where smart digital technology is influencing business models and consumer behavior. To properly see into the future, we need to look at it through the lens of a cycle of change, or indeed a prism of change. Market roles today are defined in well-established and well-recognized terms. However, if we apply the prism of change, we see that these terms can no longer be defined as sharply and distinctly as before. I could be a domestic gas and electricity supplier, but at the same time, I could also be a residential facilities manager. Market roles are more dynamic now. I can change what role I have and change it back. I can be a consumer yesterday, a prosumer today, and a consumer again tomorrow. I can have more than one market role. I can be a network and a system operator. New market roles are being introduced, especially in the new market that will exist beyond the meter, with the new technology that allows us to disaggregate information to a new level of granularity. So our first proposal is to change the terminology. Rather than using the constraining language of current definitions and the boxes they put us in, consider us all as market participants. Today's market represents an exchange of goods and services for payment. An exchange between established market functions, a market where energy flows down the supply chain in exchange for money flowing back up. However, if we apply the prism of change, today's reality is closer to a network of millions of connections that represent the exchange of data. Even today, while we consider the market as an exchange of fuel for funds, in reality, it's an exchange of data that represents an amount of fuel consumed exchanged for data that represents a financial value. There are already arrangements in place where a company will reduce an energy bill in exchange for access to information on a consumer's consumption. In effect, part of a consumer's energy bill data has been completed by energy consumption data. In the future, consumers should be able to meet their energy supply data demand, the bill, by offering a combination of data. For example, some of the bill is met by money, some by access to test data for a product trial the consumer is conducting on behalf of their supplier, and the rest of the bill, well, the supplier recovers from the consumer's electric vehicle company who sold the consumer a lifetime of electricity as part of their EV package. By applying this perspective, we no longer consider the energy market as a linear supply chain, but a network of market participants exchanging data. Under today's arrangements, organizations apply for a license according to a fixed and distinct service. Consumers need to have a meter point and then hook up to the grid. However, if we apply the prism of change, we are proposing another model that would be better suited to the market of tomorrow. Participants register their interest on entering the market, either to provide goods and services or to purchase goods and services. They do this by completing a market participant profile. Based on the nature of their interest, they will be evaluated against a set of rules to assess their risk to the market. For example, a company with a relatively small market share, strong track record, and a sound business model would be rated as low risk. Startups with a new concept might be given a higher risk rating, at least at first, until their model has been proven. On approval, the participant becomes active in the market. They are monitored against their risk profile, and if necessary, enforcement might be applied if they fail to fulfill their obligations. If they choose to amend their business model by increasing or reducing or even changing their service offering, they update their registration accordingly, which is then reassessed. So our third proposal is to change the approach and risk assess market participants. How could this model function? We suggest the use of a portal, which allows market participants to access all the necessary data they need to make decisions, and to facilitate the data exchange necessary for a fully functioning and effective market. To describe the portal would be akin to describing the internet, but in high-level terms, it is a platform which allows participants to access data relevant to the energy market. Example data sets are shown in the graphic. Through a market participant interface, participants can access data feeds which allow them to view the market and to exchange data with other participants. A supplier, for example, can track its performance against other suppliers. They can check on changes to relevant legislation and track complaints against their service. Reports can be run to profile consumption estimates against long-term weather forecasts. The interface would allow participants to register their views on proposed changes to regulations and even vote on those proposals. For regulators, the market regulation interface would give them a dashboard of market performance, how companies are performing, including using negative trending on social media forums to determine changes in risk profiles. Performance assurance data could be used to predict supplier of last resort events and therefore consider possible interventions in advance of their occurrence. The dashboard could also show outstanding regulatory actions and whether enforcement is improving behaviour on an individual company basis and/or a cross-market basis. So, in conclusion, we believe the world of energy is changing. How energy is generated, distributed and consumed is being influenced by new behaviours and new technologies. It is no longer appropriate or effective to view the energy market through the lens of today. We need to see the future through the prism of change. Change driven by the cycle of new behaviour driving new technology and new technology driving new behaviour. So for that reason, we suggest making these three changes. First, change the terminology. The old definitions are constraining our thinking. Using the term market participants removes the restriction on how we think and encourages individuals and organizations to seek new ways of operating. Second, change the perspective. Rather than the old perception of a linear supply chain, see the market for what it is now and what it will be even more so in the future. billions of connections between millions of market participants, all exchanging data. And thirdly, change the approach. Rather than applying for licenses under the old definitions, use a more flexible and dynamic risk-based assurance approach, one that reflects the risks that participants could bring to the market on the basis of what goods and services they can offer, or even the goods and services they consume from other market participants. I hope this presentation has been of value, and I hope you have been challenged. If you would like to find out more detail, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you for listening.